Hello and welcome back to the channel. So I'm just going to start by saying I'm sorry about the building work again in the background. They are literally drilling right into the ground and I don't know when it's going to stop. So I'm just going to film anyway. You can still hear me. Hopefully it's not too annoying in the background. But apologies for that anyway. So today we're going to go through Python List Comprehensions. And this is basically a way of writing lists in Python more efficiently. So we're going to get straight into it, go through some examples, and hopefully this will be helpful in making your code more efficient. So to give a little bit of a summary of list comprehensions, we basically use them to create a new list based on the values of another list. So say if I have a list from 1 to 20 and it contains every integer from 1 to 20, and I want to create a new list that just has the even numbers from that list, then we would use list comprehensions to basically pull those numbers out more efficiently. So I think the best way to start will be to just create a really simple list. Like as I just said, a list from 1 to 20 with every integer, and then we'll go from there getting a little bit more advanced. So one way we can use list comprehensions is by using a method called range. And I'm just going to give an example of this to start with. So we put range 20. So this gives us a range and it automatically goes from 0 to 20. So you might have come across for loops before, and they work by creating a statement. So we say for, we pick a letter. Quite often it's I and then we go on to J. There's probably a reason for this. I'm not entirely sure what the reason is. But for I in range 20, this is our statement. So we would assume for I in range 20, for an item in the range 0 to 20, then we put a colon, and then we're just going to print I to see what it does. Okay, so that basically prints out every single number from 0 to 20, but because we are only going up to 20, we actually don't include 20. It's from 0 to 20, and I think if you remember from when we were selecting items in lists and indexing into lists, you might remember that when we have a list, so let's just say list, won't call it my list. My list equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we want to select, say, 0 to, let's go less than that. Let's go 0 to 3. It won't actually select the third element, so it just selects the first 3. So 0, 1, 2. Because if you remember, we have 0 indexing in Python, so it starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so when we select a range, which technically this bit is a range, it includes the first item but not the last. And so when we have a range from 0 to 20, it won't include the last number. And that's basically just a rule in Python. So by default, when we use the range method, it will just create, when we just have one entry into it, it will create a range from 0 up to that number, and the intervals in between each number will just automatically be 1 unless we specify otherwise. And this can get more complicated, but for this first example, we're just going to stick with the defaults. Okay, so we've done for I in range 20, print I. What if we want to create a list from this? So let's create an empty list to start with. And then we'll put for I in range 20. And this is a bit of a throwback to one of the first videos that we went through. Using the append method, we're going to do mylist.append I. And we're just going to run this loop. And essentially what this is doing is it's going through every number in the range 20, and then it's getting my list, which is initially empty, and it's adding the item I to the list, and the item I is the number between 0 and 20. So for every number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., it's adding that to our empty list. So when I then print my list, we now have a list with every number from 0 to 19. The trouble with using for loops, though, is that they're not particularly efficient. So we're actually going to use a timing method to measure how long it takes to execute our code. To do this, we need to import the time module. Then we initialize a start time, which is time.time, and it will just give the time in that moment. Then we will run our code, in this case for I in range 20, for each number in the range 0 to 20, my list dot append I. Okay, apologies again, because now I think that they're doing hoovering in the corridor outside our flat. So this is really not ideal background noise. We'll roll with it though. We'll see how it goes. So we're appending. In fact, I just need to create my list empty again. So create an empty list, get the time, run our code, and then we are going to print how long it takes to run this code, which is, we're going to do a shortcut. Don't worry too much about the method that I'm going to be using for this. This isn't the important thing at the moment, so don't stress too much. So we're getting the immediate time right now, which is going to be different from what this initial start time was, minus start time. And actually, because we're not printing out my list, I'm gonna set this to 1,000 because I want this to be a big enough time that we can actually see a difference between this and the more efficient way of doing it. So I might have to go back and increase this again if this is not going to be comparable to the efficient list. Because also, in general, like 1,000 numbers is not going to have a big difference on the time when we're just adding them to a list. Okay, so we've created a list called my list, and it has 1,000 numbers from 0 to 999 actually. We've added them to this list, and then we've timed how long it takes this to run. Now we're going to try the Python comprehensions. So basically what we can actually do with this is run this with just one line of code. We're going to create another list called my list fast, and we start by creating some list brackets because we are creating a list, and we actually write our code within this list. And what we're going to do is have an element x, and we kind of use loops still within this, but this is a much more efficient way of using loops compared to doing for I in range blah blah blah. So for x in range 1,000, and that is literally it. To explain this a bit more, we are taking an item x. This is the item that is going into our list. So we're taking an item x for x in range 0 to 999. So add the number, this number to the list for every number in this range. So it's technically doing exactly what this is doing. We have the same for I in range 1000, but we have for x in range 1000. And here it's appending. Here we literally just pull out the number, and it's already in list format. We have the brackets around it, and so this is going to be super quick. Before I run this to 1,000, I'm just going to do range 20 just to show you that it's doing exactly the same thing. So we print out the list, and again we get exactly the same here as we did up here. So now let's do it again, but this time we're going to time it. So start time equals time.time, which is the time in the current moment right now. And then we're going to write this out again. So my list fast equals, and actually we'll create the empty list up here just so you're sure that this is already created. My list fast, and we're not just taking another element because that could be confusing. X for x in range 1000 again. And then we're doing print. This is the time seconds. And that's being taken from time.time, which is the time after it's executed, start time, the moment of truth. And here we can see this is literally taken half the time, less than half the time this is taken. And yet we've ended up with exactly the same thing. And we know we have because we've done it just the same here as a test, up to 20. All we've done is change the number to 1,000. So we could actually do this with like 100,000. Oh, I did that to 1,000,000. Okay, 100,000. Let's time that again. Went slightly slower at running, 0.0169 seconds. And here, less than half again, 0.0078 seconds. So you can see just by looking at the time difference here, what a huge difference it makes using this. And we end up with exactly the same thing. It's just writing it in one line of code. Okay, so now we have this list from 0 to 100,000. And we know that this method performs much faster. We can now start to do more fancy things with our list. So we're going to create my second list, and we're going to be using the faster method again, and we're going to be adding a condition to it this time. So we're going to be picking the number for x in range. In fact, we don't need to do the range this time. We can just get my list fast because this list already exists. But we're going to add a condition this time. And we're going to add the condition if the number is less than 50,000. Run this, and then we're going to get the length of the list because this will show us that we've done this right. So my second list, oh, didn't type that right. Length of my second list, and it's telling us it's 50,000 long. And from this list here, my list fast, will show you here the length of my list fast. We did it in a range. Oh, that actually didn't have a space there. So remember we did this in a range 0 to 100,000. Well, actually technically 99,999, but it has 100,000 elements in it, and it tells you that here. So by selecting every number up to the halfway point, we are halving the length of that list. So that did it super quickly, and it just selected the first 50,000 elements in that list. Equally, we can do the same for, say we want every even number in the list. My second, it's actually not my second list anymore, it's my third list. My third list, x for x in my list fast if x, oh, that's capital, divided by 2 leaves no remainder. And so this is basically a way of selecting even numbers. So we'll run this, then I'm going to print it, but it's going to be a very long list. Hopefully it will just print some. Okay, no, it didn't. Just print some of it. It printed every single number. Okay, so this just gives us every single even number in a list. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. I think we'll try out one more example. This time, create a list. We'll do a list of strings. So string list equals. Okay, how can we make this more interesting? Let's have types of trees. Very interesting. I'm not gonna have speech marks there. So palm, oak, fir. I don't know if that's how you spell fir, is it? No, it's F-I-R, I think. Bamboo. We're gonna be sustainable. What else is a nice type of tree? Birch. You know what? I don't know what they're called, but I'm gonna call them conker trees because that's what I used to call them when I was younger. But that kind of tree, we're gonna have that. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to create a capital list, which is going to be the same as string list, but it's going to just have capital letters for every word. Here we can actually add a function. So we're going to keep it super simple in this one. So the function we're going to add is upper, and this is basically used to get the word or the string in capital format. So actually what I'm going to do is say tree equals palm. I'll just do an example of this for you. Tree.upper, and then you'll just see what this looks like, and it creates the word in capital letters. So this is what we're doing here. We're doing the capital of whatever this is for x in string list. Run that, and then we'll have a look at this, and here we end up with the same list, but everything has capital letters. Another string method we can use is capitalize. So we're going to take this again. Tree equals oak, and then tree.capitalize, and it's with a Z because Python seems to like the American spellings for everything. And this gives us a capital letter at the start. A nice tree. This is terrible. But this capitalizes literally just the first letter of this. What we can also do is title, I think that's the right one. And this capitalizes the first letter of every word in the string. But obviously, because we are only using one word per string, we don't really need to use title, because in this case it would do the same thing as capitalize. So capitalized string list, actually, list equals x dot capitalize for x in string list. Capitalized list, and it's given us the capital letter at the start of every word. So I'm just going to try out one more example using this again. We'll create our number list again. X for x in range 100,000. And actually what we can do is, as we did here where we created a capital letter, when we're creating a list based on a range or that kind of thing, we can actually do functions in the selection of that item. So x, let's do times 20 for x in the range 0 to 100,000, and then number list, and this time I'm actually just going to select the first 5. So we should have, in this, we should have 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, etc. Let's just check that that actually worked, and it did. So that's another way of doing it. And we can actually put any function in here. We can write a function. So say we want to say define square of number, then we do return number squared. And we actually do, instead of doing like, usually you would have this the little hat symbol when we're doing a square. In Python, you actually use a double star. So we have this function, square of number. We can do number list equals square of number x, that's the number that's going into it, for x in a range. I'm just going to do this up to 5 for now, just to keep it pretty quick. Then we see our list. So remember, these numbers are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the squares should be 0, 1, 4, etc. I'm not going to just keep doing that in my head. That's a bit too much pressure. And then we print our number list, and we have the squares. That was actually, I don't know why I didn't do that in my head. That was actually really simple maths. That's a bit embarrassing. But anyway, we managed to do it using Python, so I don't need to do these kind of things in my head. This is the beauty of Python. You don't need to do calculations in your head. So I think that pretty much covers everything. I think if you want to see more examples, maybe some more complex examples, then do comment below and say if you have any requests, or if you have like specific problems that you want to use this for but you're not quite sure how to do it, then do let me know and I will reply, because I don't really get any comments, and so replying to one is really not that much time, and I want to help you. So yeah, please comment below if you have any questions. I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.